Former President Trump's team hasn't wasted much time on attacking the vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. It seems the messaging they're going with is he's a radical far-left progressive. Trump's campaign, in a statement, reacted to the news, writing, quote, "From proposing his own carbon-free agenda to suggesting stricter emission standards for gas-powered cars and embracing policies to allow convicted felons to vote, Walz is obsessed with spreading California's dangerously liberal agenda far and wide. If Walz won't tell voters the truth, we will. Just like Kamala Harris, Tim Walz is a dangerously liberal extremist, and the Harris-Walz California dream is every American's nightmare." And the Trump campaign is already working on fundraising off of the news, writing, quote, "Tim Walz will unleash hell on earth. He's already pulling in millions to wipe MAGA out." So I just don't see this attack line working simply because I think that's not a fair categorization. He himself says, okay, you guys can scream socialism, we just build roads and schools. He delivers on policy. So Trump's going to have to get specific about what he's talking about, because Walz has very frankly, and these videos have gone viral, discussed his positions, what he's gotten done in Minnesota. He's popular in a very conservative part of the country. So to frame this as something that's Californian when it's Midwestern, I just don't think it's going to stick. I think there's very few people that take Trump seriously when he calls someone a far left radical. We had, Joe Biden in office giving a ton of money to Israel, not delivering on progressive policies that he promised when he ran. It's very obvious he was a more establishment member of the party, and he was getting called a far left communist. So I don't think this attack line is going to work much longer for Trump. I don't see it sticking with Walz because he's already really good at arguing against it.
Well, you say more conservative part of the country, but Minnesota is a blue state. He's someone who said he's happy to be self-identified as a big government liberal. He supports much stricter admissions standards. He has a plan to get to absolute carbon neutrality by 2030. He's even more vigorously in support of green energy efficiency mandates than Kamala Harris is. He's far left on immigration compared to where the current mood of the country is. He's left on gun control, healthcare. He's right. He said friendly things about socialism, that socialism is just neighborliness. I know these are not controversial statements or policy positions for people on the left, but I think they're going to be alienating to the extent that conservatives are able to publicize what he absolutely thinks. He say building schools and building houses and building roads. Well, how are we going to build those things with even more and more federal mandates for which energy sources you can use to build these things, or getting the federal government more involved in arbitrating these disputes or regulating the land? That's exactly what stops us from building things. So I'd be happy to hear him renounce all of that and say, oh no, I'm actually a market liberal centrist type person who wants to make it easier to do work in this country and build things. I'd love to hear that from him. But, he has, or look at his education record. I mean, he's as friendly with teachers unions as anyone in the Democratic Party could possibly be. Teachers unions who contributed to the keeping our schools closed for as long as possible, the most locked down sector of our society, the one that was educating young children who were themselves safest of all demographics from COVID. His COVID record, by the way, is awful. I plan to get into that in greater detail, perhaps in a radar tomorrow. But look, I think Republicans will certainly raise all of these things, whether it ultimately matters, whether that's how he ends up being perceived. He's not, his personal performance of being a politician doesn't seem radical. He seems like, a nice older man. Actually, he seems older than he actually is. He's only 60. I think people were saying he kind of looks older than he is. But he has an energy about him and a way with words. So I don't know. Maybe the perception of him that Republicans are going to try won't stick, but if they talk about the things he actually believes in, they'll find that, it's extremely to the left.
Yeah, I think Americans like teachers. Teachers take care of our kids, they teach our kids. Paying teachers well is a popular policy. That's something that Harris initially ran on. I think his support from teachers unions doesn't mean he owns every political decision of teachers unions, just like Trump's campaign doesn't own every political position of the groups that endorsed him. But I think his policies during COVID, when families were struggling to put food on the table, he ensured that families were fed at schools. And he didn't say this is just if you're in a certain income bracket and there's some kind of stigmatization in the lunchroom, where I grew up in a lunchroom where it was very obvious who was on free and reduced lunch and who wasn't. He decided if middle class families want to take advantage of this, they can. And actually, this was a policy that during COVID, when families came home, they wanted to spend time with their kids. So instead of preparing lunches and breakfast, they had quality family time. And it was middle income families that ended up using this program the most for pennies on their taxes. So that's popular. People are questioning big government because big government has taken tax dollars and not given them anything in return. Tim Walz is someone who recognized that people like public programs. What they don't like is when the government raises the deficit and has a lot of public spending that regular working families and middle class Americans never end up seeing. That's what we had under Trump. He added $8.8 trillion to the deficit, and a large proportion of the money he added to the deficit was tax cuts for corporations whose profits went up by $1 trillion in the last 4 years. Tim Walz got his infrastructure spending done. He got his programs around free and reduced lunch done, public safety spending and other infrastructure through bond issuance, through capital investment, through highway cash and general fund cash. This is someone who delivers for people. And so as much as you say, oh, we should be afraid of big government, this really is the government just working for the people. And it's turned out to be extremely popular in Minnesota. So I think if Trump wants to run against all of those things and say that they're bad, I don't think it's going to go well for him.
Well, we shall find out. Kamala Harris has now made it official. Previously, these were just kind of news reports on his candidacy, but she has written on Twitter, "I'm proud to announce that I've asked Tim Walz to be my running mate as a governor, a coach, a teacher, and a veteran. He's delivered for working families like his. It's great to have him on the team. Now let's get to work. Join us." So it is official that he will be the VP pick. Tim Walz, governor, two-term governor of Minnesota and a member of Congress before that. And we're continuing to look at reactions to this and see how it all plays out. I just saw Nate Silver, the pollster, came out with a piece saying that he thinks it's a fine choice, although, as I've said, and my opinion on this is mostly based on what Nate Silver had to say, is that he still thinks Josh Shapiro would have been a better choice. Again, not in terms of governance, but just in terms of how it affects the ability to win Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania being a much, much more likely tipping state, the most likely tipping state for Harris if she wins it, than Minnesota, which she is expected to win. If Minnesota is truly competitive, that in that Donald Trump could win it, that means she's going to be having problems elsewhere in the Midwest, in all likelihood. We will have more reactions from political figures on the Tim Walz pick coming up next. Stay tuned for more Rising.